when the first trailer for Transformers 1 had released, I did not like it. I hated how the first trailer was focused on comedy, with a movie that was as serious as the beginning of the war of Cybertron. Like, it could have humor, but the problem was the trailer did not give a good representation of what this movie was going to be like. So I ended up not liking the first trailer and was concerned heavily about it. But then eventually the second trailer came out. And for a while, I was hyped again. I was like, release this movie right now. This looks good. But of course, when time goes on, that energy of a trailer kind of fizzles out of you. Where I'm like, okay, it was cool, but yeah, still have concerns. And now, here we are with the release of Transformers 1. And people are already saying that this is the best Transformers movie, or one of the best Transformers movies. And I'm here to tell you if I think it was the best Transformers movie. And all I have to say is, it's good. It's just not my favorite film, personally. It wasn't like that. I did have a few issues with this movie. Now, I can already see someone like, oh, that's because you don't like change the franchise. And you don't like things that are different. Not entirely true. I have been an advocate lately of getting away from G1. Like, not making every universe into G1. I have been very vocal about that topic lately. And also embrace shows like Transformers Prime, Armada lately, and also Transformers Animated. So don't even pull that with me. But I did have some issues that did conflict with the lore. It wasn't as big as it was when the first trailer came out. I'm like, okay, they changed this, they changed that, they changed everything. I'm not a fan of it. There are some changes that I did accept and surprisingly tolerated, but of course there are a few lore changes that I did not like, or things that the story did that I did not like. But why am I rambling on about things without an explanation? I might as well explain by telling you the plot. Spoilers ahead. So if you've not seen this movie and you want to watch the movie, please click off the video, get your ticket, get your popcorn, watch the movie, then come back when you're educated. Now, let's begin. So the movie opens up Orion Pax breaking and entering Iacon. And he is looking for some information about the Matrix of Leadership. And he has all these data cards that he grabbed, and he plugs in one of the cards where it loudly announces his presence. Now, I already have a problem with this, and especially as it goes on, so he puts it in, it's very loud, but then we see the building is highly secure, but then he plugs it back in anyway. He doesn't think, oh, maybe I should hide, just in case the security's around for a bit, then I plug it in. Or, another idea, take the data that I just got, go to a different location, because I'm guessing it's not the only place that
has one of these locations.
He puts it in the first time, and it starts malfunctioning.
Player, basically.
And the security guard comes in. He blows it off and just plugs it back
silly
in. As the security guard is slowly coming in, notices
highly secure,
Orion, and then
this is more for the higher up
two security guards already
this is just a nitpick.
there. Two security guards already there to deal with Orion, which I'll admit, we did get a funny moment where after they're saying he can't transform, so he'll be easy to catch, so let's give him a head start. And Orion does this fake transformation, then he starts running. I'll admit, this was pretty funny. And the sequence of him running through Cybertron was really cool. I really liked seeing the world of Cybertron. Also, I do have a nitpick about the movie that I forgot to mention in the beginning. Why is there a city in the skies? That doesn't make any sense. I don't think there's anything like this on Cybertron. And then also, how do people live in that building without falling out every day? Just going like, see you later, Todd. Okay. Da-da-da-da. Something like that. It just seems weird. Unless they're like wearing magnet shoes or something like that. That was something I found weird from both the trailers and the film. But anyway, continuing on. The guards eventually catch up with Orion and D16, aka Megatron, bumps into them by accident. And the guards were going like, what'd you say? And then they ask after D16's like, oh, I was talking to the guy that was behind you and Orion's gone. And then they're like, which way did he go? And he's like, they went that way. That cliche. Then Megatron, aka D16, goes in the train. And then he's like, okay, you can come out now. And somehow he's in the cart. How did he get into this cart? Now I could see something like, but it's an animated movie, DB. Logic like that can work. Well, yeah, but at the same time, how would he sneak in from being behind them, then magically being in the cart, even though it was tipped over at one point? Like, that makes no sense. That he'd just be in the cart. Anyway, continuing on, Orion's like, I'm glad you had my back. He also gives Megatron a Megatronus sticker, which these are clearly references to how Transformers toys used to have stickers. And I found it weird in the movie that they added that. Like, why would you reference the stickers that nobody liked? Like, even G1ers, I'm pretty sure, didn't like these stickers. Anyway, continuing on, we go to the mines and we're introduced to all the other Autobots. Or miners, I should say, even though most of them are Autobots. I do have an issue already with the miners, but I'll save that for later. So, we go to the mines and we get a speech from Sentinel Prime about how they were looking for the Matrix, but they failed. And then also we have the details that the Matrix, well, the power of the Matrix restored, brought Energon to the entire planet of Cybertron. Which, it works with the concept of the golden age of Cybertron. Because the golden age, from what I remember, is like this era of peace. Where Energon was in full supply and there was no war, just a little corruption here and there, and that's about it, which we'll get into that. So then we start in the mines after that, and we get to meet Elita 1, who is insufferable in this movie. I do not like her. Even though she's played by Scarlett Johansson, one of my favorite actresses. Yeah, I was okay with Scarlett Johansson being Elita 1. Fight me. And you're probably wondering, why do you not like her so much? Because she's mean to Orion the entire time. For most of the movie, actually. Even her opening scene, she's like, I didn't acknowledge that we're not friends or something like that. I mean, this wasn't the worst of her. And also, I was brought up this information ahead of time when I was talking to one of my friends who saw the movie early. And this friend explained that Alita is a bit annoying in this movie. And I got the context. I was hoping that it wasn't as bad as he said, but it was bad. Anyway, we get the whole mining sequence, but then the mining sequence goes wrong when Wheeljack accidentally triggers the Energon, and it goes nuclear, and they start evacuating the mine, but Jazz is trapped under the rubble, and Orion goes to save Jazz. Same with D16, and they try helping him, even though Alita's telling him to go back and retreat, basically. And they save Jazz, but his leg is ripped off in the process because they couldn't get the rock off all the way. And they had to use a jetpack, which they use jetpacks for going down the caves of Cybertron for Energon. And then the impact of the explosion comes by, and Alita's like, take cover, and the explosion hits them anyway. And then Orion's like, sorry that happened, and she's like, I could get fired, and Orion's like, you can't get fired. And then Darkwing just comes in, you're fired, which was actually pretty funny, I'll admit. It's the moment like, this won't happen, and then it happens. And Orion tries taking responsibility and trying to help out Alita 1, but then she just gets mad at him again for no reason. Like, he took accountability. It wasn't like, no, she did it, or something like that. I mean, I kind of get this moment because one miner in your core messed up and you're getting removed because of that one mistake. And then Orion decides to stick it up to Darkwing and does the transforming, flipping the bird scene, which I'll admit was pretty funny. And then, as the trailer showed, Megatron stopped the punch and punched Orion, and then he tried to be diplomatic and say, I know that he broke protocol, and then Darkwing just punches Megatron. And then, of course, Orion's like, thanks for having my back. And D16's like, even though you were out of line. And it was a nice moment. And then, oh yeah, also, we had an announcement from Sentinel Prime at the same point where he said that they couldn't find the Matrix, that the Icon 500, if I'm not mistaken, I had to literally search it to make sure on YouTube, and it appears to be that. Which I'll admit, that was a nice touch. I don't think that's been ever touched in Transformers besides the comics, so I'll give this movie some credit that they brought such an underrated concept into the film. Anyway, we go tonight where the miners are powered down, and Orion wakes up D16, and he tells D16, we should go in the race and make history. But D16's like, no, we gotta follow our orders, or they'll demote us back to the lowest level. And Orion asks D16, don't you want to be so much more? I want to make a difference. And D16 is like, it's best we stick the way we're going so we don't go and get into trouble and accept our place. Where the next morning we get to go to the race, and Orion has brought D16 with him to one of the best seats, or literally the starting line of it. I think you know where this is heading if you've seen the clip. And as the race is about to start, and D16 is impressed that they got the best seats, and then Orion puts a jetpack on D16, and then he's like, it's time to show him that we're more than meets the eye. Then they join the race as they're released from the top, And, of course, just like the clip, Sentinel Prime is like, are those miners? The miners get excited, which are just Autobots for the most part. And then, of course, in the area that Elita 1's in now, she's like, you gotta be kidding me. As the other miners are excited that there are miners here. And then, of course, we get the whole race sequence, which is pretty cool. I actually like this scene. And as the race goes on, D16 and Orion are so close to victory. But of course, at the last second, D16 trips over, then Orion picks up D16. They're still so close. But then Chromia comes in and interrupts the race. I'm like, and looking at the design, I'm like, that's Chromia? Yeah, that just looked like a generic Transformer to me. That didn't look anything like Chromia. They could have just made a new character, but yeah, I don't care that much. Then we get another funny scene where Orion's like, second place is still not bad. And then every other racer just comes in front of them, and they're like the last place, which was actually pretty funny. Then we transition to the medical bay or something like that, and we get a name drop of Ratchet, and one of the nurses, nurse, was dragging one of the racers, and the guy's like, did I win? And the nurse is like, you participated? And then we get the scene where Orion's like, so how long do we have to wait for? And D16 going like, I'm not talking to you. And then he talks to him anyway, like, we're so screwed and all that. D16's like, we should have stayed in the mines where he wouldn't have gotten in trouble. We're going to be demoted. And Orion's like, didn't it feel good that we were so close to making history? And D16's like, it was, but we're still going to get in trouble. And then they're interrupted by the arrival of Arachnid and Sentinel Prime. And it appears Arachnid is like the second head honcho of Cybertron, basically. And Sentinel Prime's like, I was very unexpected that miners were going to come, and he seems all mad. And then he says he loved it, and he really appreciated what they did, and it convinced miners to work harder and to be motivated by them. And Sentinel's like, I'll even let you guys in my own personal office. And they're so excited until Darkwing comes up and then puts them at the lowest tier in the mining area where they're never seen again. Or Darkwing says they're never going to be seen again. And then we meet B-127. I really wanted to like him. And before you pull the argument, you hate the actor. No, I don't. I love the guy who does Bumblebee. I love him as an actor. I've seen him in plenty of other stuff. He was in Wonka. I loved that. He was also Toad in Super Mario. I also liked him in that. So I don't want to hear that I don't like him because he's some racist or something like that. Or you just find him, the actor, annoying. It's none of that. It's just the writing of this Bumblebee drives me absolutely nuts. Like, I barely found a joke from him funny. I was hoping it was something similar to Rise of the Beast. For context, I wasn't a huge fan of how Mirage was portrayed in the trailers. I did not like his attitude. He seems like the cringy character that's trying to be hip with kids. Until I actually watched the movie and really enjoyed him. He was like one of my favorite parts about Rise of the Beast. But that doesn't really happen with B, unfortunately. I just found him annoying for the most part. There was a couple things he did that was funny. But his whole introduction was just the same as the trailer. I couldn't handle it. And then we get to see his creepy statue friends, which, one of them's killed by accident. I can't remember exactly how, but then one of the pieces falls off, and it turns out to be a message from Alpha Trion, and they get the location where the primes were at, and Orion thinks that that could be where the matrix of leadership is also. So B-127, D-16, and Orion Pax go to find Alpha Trion and find the matrix. And they sneak aboard one of the trains that is transporting the cargo. And Alita 1 enters the train to drop off some of the carts, but she notices that the vent's been open and she heard a sound before, so she knows someone's there. She runs into D-16, B-127, and Orion, and she's about to report them, but then the train closes and heads off. They start traveling to the upper world, to Cybertron. She still wants to report them, but then the top half of the planet begins to transform, like spikes coming out of the ground. And then we get the funny sequence where B is running to the end of the train where he's trying to get in, which of course the door's closed and they end up tipping over. And then we get the scene where they are trying to find the train, which we get a funny moment where Lee's like, "Where's the train?" And Orion's like, "It's right there," and it just passes by. He's like, "Oh, yeah." And Lee just screams. That sequence was actually pretty funny. And then we get more of the B-127 stuff. And he's doing the Badass Atron joke again. Because he did it earlier in the movie. But then he does it 3 more times in another scene. Like, in the same scene. It's not even spread out. It's just like, Badass Atron. Badass Atron. Badass. And then Aaliyah interrupts him, which was the best part of that scene, to be honest. And then they are getting close to the cave, but before that, the Quintesson ship comes by and they're scanning for life forms, which we saw earlier. A deer moved by, or a robot antelope, or whatever Sideswipe referenced in G1. That's what people are speculating it is. And it gets shot and killed, which I'll admit, that was pretty funny. So then they have to hide from the scanners, and then almost B-127 almost gets caught by the scanners, but Prime had to hold him. And then after the scanning process is done, the Quintesson ship leaves. They find the cave, and they find all the 13 primes, including Megatronus. And then they find Alpha Trion, which B-127 then grabs an Energon cube from his arm and puts it in Alpha Trion's mouth. And then Alpha Trion emerges, and Alpha Trion's like, "What's going on?" And the war between the Quintessons, and the Autobots explain that the Primes won the war, and Sentinel Prime is protecting them and stuff. And Alpha Trion's like, "Sentinel Prime is not a Prime," and they take a hard time believing it. And Alpha Trion does this cool sequence with like dust or something like that to show them the past of Cybertron with the 13 original Primes. And it turns out that Sentinel was their assistant, but in a mission against the Quintessons, Sentinel stabs them in the back and kills every single last one of the 13 Primes, including Megatronus, which was weird to see Megatronus in here, Because in Transformers lore, he's supposed to be the most devious out of all the primes. Well, maybe second devious, since in some continuities, Leech Maximo is the prime of deception of sorts. He was the one who manipulated Megatronus to becoming. Why wasn't Leech Maximo mentioned in this movie? Oh well, doesn't matter. Sentinel then kills Zeta Prime and takes the Matrix for himself, but then the Matrix disappears because he is not worthy and Primus did not choose him to become a Prime, which caused the planet to fall apart and cease on Energon. And of course, all of the four main leads are like, this can't happen. This couldn't have been, because they've believed it. And Alpha Trion also mentions that they were born with T-Cogs, but then Sentinel basically removed their T-Cogs at a young age, which was a scene that did hit really hard. Surprisingly. Because I wasn't open to the concept of them not having T-Cogs, but then getting used to it, and then seeing that scene, like, that scene did hit hard. Then we go outside where the Autobots are watching Sentinel meeting up with the Quintessons, and they find out that the crates that they've been transporting to the Quintessons is actually their Energon. And Sentinel's like, I'll bring more, I promise to help, and all that. And he also says, like, double the miner shift and all that. And of course, this is a lot, and this is a lot for them to take in, because Sentinel, for the longest time, was a role model for the Transformers, or the Cybertronian race, as I should say. And D16 is especially mad since he was a big Sentinel Prime fan. And you could see him shifting towards Megatron a little bit. And then Alpha Trion gives them the T-Cogs, and they get the ability to transform now. And we get the whole sequence where they're leaving the cave because the drones have discovered the area and Arachnid, and they're retreating. They're learning how to transform, and they eventually do. It was a really cool sequence, and they are so excited that they have the ability to transform. And D16 is still mad about Sentinel, and he's like, I'm gonna kill him. He's not prepared for what I'm going to do to him. And we have a small moment where Megatron began to show himself. Then after that, the crew is knocked out, and we get to meet the High Guard of Cybertron, which consists of Shockwave, Soundwave, Starscream, the Seekers, and many other Decepticons. And we also get the funny moment of being muzzled, and Shockwave being like, he wouldn't stop talking, especially when he was unconscious. I still love that scene to this day. And they explained that they used to be the High Guard of Cybertron, but then Sentinel, after killing the Primes, they went rogue, and they planned to overthrow Sentinel Prime, but Megatron starts walking away, and then he starts battling Starscream because he's calling Starscream weak for doing nothing, and he beats the scrap out of him, and it messes with his voice, which I guess it was an unnecessary explanation, but I say it's kind of cool to find out why Starscream's voice is that way, I guess, even though it wasn't really that necessary, to be honest. And then Megatron takes control of the High Guard, but then Arachnid and drones take out most of the soldiers and capture what there is of the soldiers. And then before that, I forgot this, we also get a scene of Sentinel and Alpha Trion. And Alpha Trion says that he's a disgrace to the name Prime, and Sentinel kills him. And he's like, why do they always monologue? They were always like that with the speeches. But anyway, continuing on, Orion awakens from the rubble with the help of Alita 1. He's like, D16 was right. We should have done it this way. And especially since the proof was destroyed, which the proof for some reason is sand, apparently. I did find that weird. Anyway, Alita then does a motivational speech by saying, like, I'm better than you in every way, and you're optimistic, and you can follow people. Wow, what a way to encourage the next Prime, Alita, saying that you're better than him. Wow, I really did not like Alita in this movie. As you can tell from this review, I didn't like her. Continuing on, Optimus then gets motivated somehow from that terrible speech, and they team up with the High Guard to stop Sentinel from his plans to controlling Cybertron and trading Energon with the Quintessons. Then we go back to the building of Cybertron. I think it might be Iacon. I can't remember where the Transformers capital is. But anyway, Sentinel is telling them that he's going to execute every single one of them. He's also going to frame them for working with the Quintessons and all that. And Megatron refuses to stay kneeling down, where Sentinel then scratches a Megatronus symbol onto his chest. And then the Autobots and the High Guard, or not known as the Autobots, they come to the mining area where he convinces all the miners to rebel against Sentinel Prime because of all the things he's done. And then they are on a train which crashes into the Capitol building. And then there's a bunch of fighting between the drones and the Autobots. There's even a fight between Alita 1 and Arachnid. And then Megatron is going after Sentinel Prime, where we can see some energy from D16. Like, there's this moment where he smacks Sentinel, like, really hard. And Sentinel Prime then just smacks him back like he was nothing. And we get a few scenes like that where he's still fighting. And there's a point where Sentinel gets into his armor. Oh, and then before all the fighting, he reveals that Sentinel Prime took Megatronus's cog from his chest after he killed him for some reason. I don't think it's relevant to the story, but I do know why they did it. Anyway, Orion eventually catches up with D16, and as D16's about to kill Sentinel Prime, Optimus is trying to stop him, or I should say Orion. And in the process of stopping D16 from killing Sentinel, Orion Pax gets in the way, and he gets shot by D16, and D16 regrets that, and then D16 is like, why'd you do that? And then he's like, I'm done defending you. He drops Orion, and he actually dies. I didn't expect them to kill Orion in this movie. I figured it was just going to be, he goes into the soul of Primus alive, then he gets the Matrix. Now, and that's how it happens. That's how it's been happening lately. Then, after dropping Orion, B and Alita try taking on D16, where eventually D16 calls himself Megatron, as we know from the source material. Then we go to the Well of All Sparks, where the Primes are talking to Orion, and Orion comes back to life and becomes Optimus Prime. Megatron kills Sentinel by ripping him in half. Did not see that coming. I figured it would have just been like hinting that he would dismember or cut off Sentinel's head, but it wouldn't show his death. But we would see like his body flop or something like that. I felt like they were going to cheap out, but no. They did kind of cut off in some parts, but we clearly can see that he ripped Sentinel in half, which was very shocking. Anyway, then Optimus comes, and he's like, we could have built the future together, and D16's like, I don't think so. They do some fighting, which was really cool. Optimus gets his Energon axe. They do some more fighting. Oh, also, Megatron puts Megatronus's T-Cog in his chest before he announced himself as Megatron. I forgot that detail. And then Optimus then slices Megatron's cannon where it no longer can work. And Prime basically said, you have doomed Cybertron, where we could have made the future different, but you made it worse like Sentinel Prime did. And he banishes Megatron, and Megatron's like, we will meet again someday. Megatron leaves with the High Guard. Optimus restores Energon to the planet. And then we get a cool epic shot of all the Autobots getting T-Cogs. And then driving off into the sunset, basically, where he said, if the Quintessons dare return, the Autobots will be here to protect Cybertron. And that is the end of the movie. Until we get a end credits scene with Megatron turning the High Guard of Cybertron into the Decepticon army. And that is the end of the movie. Now, I definitely have thoughts about this movie. And I'll admit, between making this video, recordings, my views did change a little bit after talking with some friends of mine. Like, originally, I actually didn't like the ending of the movie. I felt like, not the scene itself, it just felt like the atmosphere of the scene of Energon being restored to Cybertron was dumb and kind of defeats the purpose of the war. But then after talking about it and then rewatching the scene, I kind of saw, I'm like, okay, I get what they're going for. And also there was a point brought up, like, just because the Energon comes back during the war doesn't mean that will be the end. Like, it might deplete at another point, because in the Transformers lore, a lot of it, in a lot of continuities, there's a golden age of Cybertron where there's enough Energon and there's no war, everything is great. But then during the war, Energon has been depleted, it's in low stock, and also there's a war going on. So I just felt like it was off knowing the source material, but then being explained and also the possibilities of the story, I'm like, okay, I can actually see where you're coming from on this. Also, a nitpick I said I would get back to was the miners being Autobots. Okay, so I do have a bit of an issue with all the miners being the Autobots. It kind of seems weird that most of the miners are Autobots. I think it would have made more sense that the miners were more of the Decepticons. Like, you can have some Autobots as miners and some Decepticons as miners. I just felt like it was weird, because the whole point of the Decepticon movement throughout all of the franchise was the Decepticons rebelled. Okay, maybe not G1, that's the only exception to this. That the Decepticons rebelled because they were oppressed by the Cybertronian government, and they believed, and especially Megatron at that point, they believed that they could build a better future, and the best way to do it was to overthrow the government of the Cybertronian race, which this movie did hint at a bit. But at the same time, it probably would have made more sense to have an equal amount split between Autobots and Decepticons for miners, where most of the miners are just Autobots for some reason. Because the Decepticons are the ones who are supposed to be oppressed, especially Megatron. Megatron was the one who started the movement. I think it would have been nice to have an equal balance between the two. You didn't have to go completely to how every other universe has done it, where all the people that are being oppressed are Decepticons. You could have kept it as Autobots as well. You could have had an equal split, but they just went with the Autobots for some reason. Not a single con except for D16. It's a small little nitpick. I just felt like that would have made more sense for the story, knowing how the Decepticons rebel against Cybertronian law. But besides that, I didn't hate the movie. Now, I don't think it's the greatest thing ever. I think people are overhyping this movie to an extreme. Like, it's not the best thing we've ever gotten for Transformers. I can definitely think of better examples. 86, 2007, Dark of the Moon, and Predacons Rising. It's definitely on the list of the best Transformers movies, though. If I would have to rate the Transformers movies at the moment, with the 9 films, if we include, 10, actually, if we think about it, because the G1 movie, Predacons Rising, the 5 Michael Bay movies, Rise of the Beast and Bumblebee, and TF1, I would rank them like this: 1986, 2007, Dark of the Moon, Transformers 1, Predacons Rising, Rise of the Beast, Bumblebee, Age of Extinction, The Last Knight. That's how I would rate them, by good to bad. Like, this movie isn't great, but it is definitely an improvement over the last 2 Transformers movies that we got. Like, even as someone who didn't hate Rise of the Beast, and as his controversial opinion, actually likes Rise of the Beast more than Bumblebee, I will say this movie's better than that one. I know Rise of the Beast isn't great. I felt like it improved on some things that B failed at, but I know it's not a great movie. And seeing this, I'm like, yeah, this is definitely better than those 2. I'm going to be honest. And yeah, that's all I have to say. I actually do recommend to watch this movie. And I'm probably going to see it again because who knows? Maybe my opinion changes on it. It changed a bit after talking to some friends of mine and rewatching the ending scenes. Because as I said, I hated the ending of the film. I would have pictured the film ending off with some fighting with Optimus and Megatron and then it cutting off where there's like, what's going to happen next? But with how it ended now and understanding the ending better, I'm fine with it. But yeah, that's all I have to say. If I had to rate this movie, I had to give it an 8 or 7 out of 10. This movie is good, but not that good. Anyway, this is D to the B signing off, and I would love to hear your thoughts on TF1. And have a nice day, everyone.